This isn't a partisan witch hunt. This was a motion, a bipartisan motion supported by the Democrats to bring the Clintons in.
She has been very clear. She's never met Jeffrey Epstein. We have no evidence of her having any interactions with Mr. Epstein.
This is Today As It Happened. Good Thursday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From Hillary Clinton testifying behind closed doors to the House Oversight Committee to diplomatic talks between the U.S. and Iran. But first, let's take a look at some of our other top stories of the day. Investigators were seen at the home of missing 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie yesterday. This comes following a huge surge in tips to the FBI since an increased reward was announced by Savannah Guthrie in a video on Tuesday. Authorities are also reportedly getting ready to turn the home back over to the family as the search continues into its fourth week. Nancy Guthrie is believed to have been abducted from her home hours after being seen last January 31st. FBI Director Kash Patel has fired at least 10 employees connected to the investigation into President Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents. Those firings are part of a wider internal investigation after Patel discovered the FBI had subpoenaed his communication records and those of White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles while they were private citizens. Patel called the subpoenas outrageous and deeply alarming. First Lady Melania Trump will make history next week as the first sitting U.S. First Lady to preside over a United Nations Security Council meeting. The historic session will focus on education, technology, peace, and security issues. U.S. Ambassador to the UN Mike Waltz and international stakeholders will join that meeting at UN headquarters in New York on Monday. And Vice President J.D. Vance announced the Trump administration is temporarily halting $259 million in Medicaid funding to Minnesota over fraud concerns. The move is part of what Vance calls an aggressive crackdown on misuse of public funds. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz calls it a campaign of retribution, saying Trump is weaponizing the federal government to punish blue states. Walz has 60 days to propose a corrective action plan. It's a story many people are wondering about. Will the U.S. launch military action against Iran? Now, this comes amid a huge U.S. military buildup in the Middle East. Scripps News Chief Washington correspondent Joe St. George has the latest on U.S. and Iranian talks that are taking place in Geneva today.
Will Thursday bring the United States and Iran closer to a diplomatic solution or to military action as leaders meet in Switzerland? Secretary of State Marco Rubio with this warning about Iran.
I want you to understand, and everyone should know, that Iran poses a very grave threat to the United States.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio delivering that message as Iranians arrived in Switzerland for indirect talks with the United States Thursday, the third such meeting in as many weeks. Rubio saying the talks cannot just be about Iran's nuclear program.
Iran possesses a very large number of ballistic missiles, particularly short-range ballistic missiles that threaten the United States and our bases in the region and our partners in the region. Iran refuses to talk about the ballistic missiles to us or to anyone, and that's a big problem.
The Switzerland gathering taking place as the U.S. military continues to be positioned in the Middle East, which is now the biggest buildup in the region since 2003 and the beginning of the Iraq War. President Donald Trump, in his State of the Union earlier this week, saying this about the possibility of a deal or military action.
My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
The Trump administration has briefed senior congressional leaders on Capitol Hill about Iran in recent days, including Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
Closed-door briefings are fine, but the administration has to make its case to the American people as something as important as this.
As far as Iran goes, a spokesman for the foreign minister saying this on social media. Professional liars are good at creating the illusion of truth. Repeat a lie often enough, and it becomes the truth is a law of propaganda coined by Nazi Joseph Goebbels. This is now systematically used by the U.S. administration and the war profiteers encircling it. Joe St. George, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Now let's take a look at some of the other top headlines of the day. The parent of a teenager charged in a deadly school shooting is back on trial for the 9th day. Police say Colin Gray's then 14-year-old son Colt killed 2 teachers, 2 students, and wounded 9 others back in September 2024. Investigators say Colin bought his son an assault rifle for Christmas and was well aware that the child's mental health had deteriorated before the shooting. Colin Gray faces up to 150 years in prison if convicted on all charges. East Tennessee Children's Hospital is getting a new name, and a famous one at that. The Knoxville-based facility has officially rebranded as the Dolly Parton Children's Hospital. The news came in a video message from Parton on Thursday, who praised the hospital's doctors, nurses, and volunteers. She said the partnership reflects a shared commitment to world-class care delivered with compassion. The hospital was founded in 1937, and it was called the East Tennessee Children's Hospital for more than 50 years. iPhone lovers, this next story is not for you. Samsung has unveiled its latest smartphone, the Galaxy S26, and it boasts a list of new AI features, but its new privacy display is what's stealing headlines. This prevents stray eyes from peeping over your shoulder and seeing sensitive information on your screen.
And what it's implemented is something that rather than having an aftermarket screen cover that hides the display, you can actually turn it on and off on the phone itself. So if someone's sitting either side of you or someone's looking over your shoulder, you can block out key details.
Nobody can search and see your shopping habits. Prices start at $900 and the Ultra version is $1,300. Not so cheap, but sales kick off on March 11th. 4 more cities are getting driverless vehicles. Tuesday, Waymo announced it is expanding to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Orlando. The company is owned by Google parent Alphabet and offers rides in autonomous cars without drivers. This is the first time it has expanded to multiple cities at the same time. That expansion brings the total number of cities Waymo serves to 10. Coming up on Today As It Happened, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testified before the Republican-led House Oversight Committee on Thursday. That's amid the panel's investigation into disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. So stay with us here for Scripps News correspondent Alex Miller's reporting on what we know. That's after the break. Thanks for staying with us here on Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer with your daily look at the day's biggest stories.
The mayor of Newark, New Jersey, saying an ICE chase caused a multi-vehicle crash involving children. Mayor Ross Baraka said the agents tried to pull over the van. The driver took off, leading to that chase. It ended in an accident involving a number of vehicles, as you can see here. One of those vehicles had 3 children inside. Baraka calling the actions by ICE reckless and dangerous. New Jersey state law bans law enforcement from chasing vehicles unless the suspect poses an immediate threat. Right now, the late Reverend Jesse Jackson being honored for his life and legacy, his casket lying in repose at the Rainbow Push Coalition headquarters in Chicago. Members of the public have been stopping by to pay their respects. He died last week after decades fighting for civil rights. He's being remembered as a 2-time presidential candidate, a shadow senator in Washington, D.C., and helping to secure the release of dozens of Americans held captive overseas. He's also expected to lie in state next week at the South Carolina Capitol building. The CEO of Netflix heading to the White House tomorrow, topping the agenda, Netflix bid to acquire Warner Brothers, and President Trump's demand that Netflix fire board member Susan Rice. Rice is a former Biden administration advisor on Truth Social. Trump calling for Rice to be fired, warning of consequences should she remain on the board. Last week, Rice warned that corporations, media outlets, and law firms that, in her words, bent the knee to Trump could face consequences of their own. Could happen, she says, if Democrats return to power. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton behind closed doors now for more than an hour being deposed in New York. Lawmakers on the House Oversight Committee are looking into the investigations of both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. What did she know? When did she know it? She says nothing. Scripps News senior national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York. Alex, I understand you just got some breaking news, specifically because you've looked through thousands of files for the name Hillary Clinton. What is her connection here, and what exactly does the committee want to hear from the former First Lady?
Well, Del, let's first talk about this breaking news here. This committee just took a pause on their questioning of Secretary Clinton, and that is because Congresswoman Lauren Boebert took a photo and sent it to somebody who had published it on social media. I am told by a source familiar that this questioning was stopped, and it has since resumed. But let's get back to what we were talking about before, about what her connection is to this. I think that is the big question here. I spent time looking through every single file that her name was attached to. There are several hundred of them. But first of all, there are many duplicates of emails. And most of the times that her name is listed in these files, it is an email that Jeffrey Epstein is sending back and forth to somebody that has to do with polling during the 2016 election, articles that her name is mentioned in various instances, particularly as Secretary of State. So there are no emails back and forth. What you're looking at right now is an invitation that Jeffrey Epstein did get in 2014 from Hillary Clinton and Congresswoman Nita Lowey. He did not end up going to that fundraiser. But the more interesting invitation I want to show you is from 2015 that I found. That is a fundraiser that Hillary Clinton was holding. If you look at the top there, it is Howard Lutnick, the now Commerce Secretary under President Trump, who invited Jeffrey Epstein to this event. Now, it's unclear if he attended this one. We know the image that you just saw, he declined that invite. But all of the other information I was able to find there was just talking about Hillary Clinton. There was never any correspondence between them. We do know that there was donations made to Hillary Clinton, and the one time that I was able to see some information about Hillary Clinton was in this deposition that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche took this summer, where Ghislaine Maxwell says that she went to the Clinton's home in Chappaqua multiple times, but that she doesn't recall Secretary Clinton ever meeting or speaking with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, listen to what the chairman of this committee, James Comer, had to say just before this. He was asked by a reporter what they wanted to get from Hillary Clinton today. This is what he said.
When you look at all the co-conspirators, and we've all seen the unredacted documents, Maxwell is the main co-conspirator. No one brought more women in and lied to more women about what was going to happen with their involvement with Jeffrey Epstein than Ghislaine Maxwell. We know that obviously Maxwell was a guest at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. There weren't many people that went to that wedding. So again, we're not accusing Hillary Clinton of wrongdoing. We know that Jeffrey Epstein said many times in emails that he was the first person to raise money for the Clinton Initiative, the Clinton Foundation, that he solicited money at some of his properties for the Clinton Foundation.
Now, I want to make sure that we point out getting the Clintons to testify today and tomorrow was bipartisan. We saw Democrats also supporting this, supporting a contempt vote when the Clintons did not want to testify. So this is bipartisan in nature, but Democrats were very quick to point out that Republicans did not travel last week to Ohio to depose Les Wexner, who we know was Jeffrey Epstein's #1 client. But as you saw in that soundbite there, many Republicans are there today to question them. Now, Hillary Clinton pulling no punches in her opening statement. I want to read you a little piece of that where she says, "The committee justified its subpoena to me based on its assumption that I have information regarding the investigations into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his islands, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that." She also, by the way, called them out for withholding the files, for not getting testimony from other people. We are expecting to get updates throughout the day. The chairman indicated this is going to be a very long day of testimony. It'll be a long day of testimony for former President Bill Clinton tomorrow as well. So we are expecting to get updates at the podium regularly from both sides on this. And then eventually we will see some form of video of this deposition, Del. But how long, if it'll be edited, we really do not know.
Alex, has the committee opened Pandora's box? We know the Democrats say that they will want to call the sitting president. But as Hillary Clinton is also the former first lady, does this open the door now for Democrats on the committee to call Melania Trump?
You know, I think that's how Democrats feel, that this really does open Pandora's box. And I should say Republicans have indicated this could be an issue as well. When the Clinton contempt vote happened just a couple of weeks ago, this is something that Republicans said, look, we're going to give them license to be able to call President Trump and others if we do this. They understand. You even saw the president having an interview that same day saying suddenly that he really liked Bill Clinton. And so I think there is an awareness there that this is a very real possibility. I think obviously more difficult to call a sitting president, but after November, if Democrats take over the House, then take over this committee, it is a very different ball game for this investigation.
Scripps News senior national correspondent Alex Miller for us live in New York. Alex, thank you for your reporting and for the breaking news.
Straight ahead on Today as It Happened.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist.
Glad you're back with Today as It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. All right, why don't we jump right back into the rundown of our top stories of the day.
A federal judge will not block President Trump from building that $400 million ballroom at the White House. The National Trust for Historic Preservation argued that federal law bars construction without congressional approval. The administration argued, though, it followed a long line of presidential renovations. It seems the courts agreed. Good time to buy a house. Mortgage rates falling below 6% for the first time since 2022. 30-year fixed rate now 5.98%, according to Freddie Mac. This time last year it was 6.76%. In layman's terms, that means the same house this year will cost you hundreds less in your mortgage payment. Homeland Security has been under fire this year following the deaths of those two American citizens in Minnesota. Now the agency is being sued, accused of retaliating against people who record those images against ICE. The lawsuit alleges agents are using AI to identify people on the street and then add them to a secret database. Scripps News senior national correspondent Katia Tubman is live in New York. She's been digging into the matter. And Katia, what more have you found out about this lawsuit?
Well, Del, two women in Maine are now suing the Department of Homeland Security, accusing federal agents of threatening to add them to a database for domestic terrorists. And here I want you to see a video of one of those instances detailed in the lawsuit.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist.
Now, Del, that encounter is detailed in the lawsuit, as I said, but it's also with another instance where a plaintiff was told by an agent, if you keep coming to things like this, you are going to be on a domestic terrorist watch list. Then we're going to come to your house later tonight. Now, the plaintiffs in the case say agents retaliated against them for exercising their First Amendment right to observe and protest ICE enforcement operations. Del?
Katie, it's not illegal to observe or even protest ICE operations. Does this database of protesters, as these agents said exists, does it really happen?
Well, if you ask the government, which we did, Del, the answer is no. DHS said in a statement to us that, of course, they monitor and investigate all threats, but what constitutes a threat right now is a major problem, as we've seen in so many cases where people who've tracked or protested against ICE have been called domestic terrorists while not doing anything illegal. And I spoke to an organizer in Minneapolis where we've seen similar instances of agents threatening to add people to a database. And she told me that many people know they are being personally tracked. Here's what she said.
There have been reports here in Minneapolis of federal agents stopping someone and calling them by name. And it absolutely creates the sense that I am being watched, I'm being monitored, and I am being watched and monitored as a potential threat and being named as a potential threat by my own government.
Now, mind you, Del, this is all happening as the DHS is rapidly expanding its AI-powered surveillance tools. Now, this is tech that lets agents scan faces, license plates, and social media posts in real time. And that's a major concern considering what was originally meant for tracking non-citizens is now also being used to monitor U.S. citizens, protesters, and even bystanders without a warrant or clear suspicion. So it's a big shift, and it's basically expanding who's considered a threat and who gets watched and how. Del?
And basically, who gets to say someone is the threat or whether or not they are or are not. Scripps News national correspondent Katia Tubman for us live in New York City. Katia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Walmart has been tricking its delivery drivers. Now the FTC is telling Walmart to pay up. Walmart has now agreed to pay $100 million to drivers who say the company inflated their base pay. The drivers also said Walmart told them they could keep all of their customer tips. Turns out those tips were handled through its Spark program, then given to a number of drivers. The FTC says that cost delivery drivers tens of millions of dollars. Walmart says it has issued payments to those affected drivers, saying it will continue to do so as needed. A sad update now on that youth ice rink shooting in Rhode Island last week. A third victim has now died from his injuries. Pawtucket police say the victim had been in critical condition since the gunman targeted his ex-wife and family before killing himself. 2 other victims remain in critical condition.
Coming up on Today's It Happened.
We're in the era of the data center boom, but do you ever wonder how they actually work? I'm Maura Barrett. Coming up, I'll take you on a rare trip inside one of the spaces that effectively runs our digital economy.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. This is Scripps News, end-of-day snapshot of our biggest stories. So why don't we pick up right where we left off?
Big tech and a lot of local governments are moving full steam ahead as they build those data centers, as many of them as possible. It's all to power the AI boom. Thousands are in the works across the country this year alone. Scripps News business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett takes us live now inside these secretive and, yes, controversial sites. And Maura, these centers generate a lot of buzz. Literally buzzing. They're also being blamed for energy bill shock. You toured one of the sites. What did you find?
Well, Del, all of us have probably seen one of these massive yet really nondescript data centers driving along the highway. It's become this multi-billion-dollar industry, massively expanding thanks to the AI boom. And the thing is, even though we all have seen the exterior of them, not many of us understand what goes on inside or even what is necessary to build these data centers. And so we were able to get a rare look inside one of the digital realty data centers down in Dallas, Texas. They're one of the largest data center platforms globally, to get an inside look and really get an understanding of this massive industry.
A single file turnstile, card swipes, and a biometric scan. And once you're inside with the vast expanse of servers, you have to be careful around the surrounding cages. Just touching one of them sets off a building-wide alarm. This security and secrecy essential to store, process, and protect all of the data we use every day.
It's a burgeoning requirement that more and more of the digital economy is based on infrastructure that lives in data centers. At the same time, you see the emergence of AI. AI has become a core part of what's driving a lot of the utilization.
Colin McLean is the Chief Revenue Officer at Digital Realty, one of the world's largest data center platforms, with 300 plus properties across more than 50 cities globally. When you stream a show, pay for groceries, or ask an AI chatbot a question, your data is taking a trip. Think of data centers like digital airports, directing and processing billions of data flights every second all around the world.
When people hear cloud, they think about some object in the ether. Cloud has to physically live somewhere, and it lives in data centers.
This particular data center campus spans 1.3 million square feet.
You get your steps in.
But not all data centers look or work the same way. Some, like the one we visited, are like office buildings for data. Multiple companies rent space and share the infrastructure. These are co-location data centers. Big tech giants like Google often build and run their own private facilities, known as hyperscale data centers. Inside, the space is divided into data halls, filled with towers of servers. The more closely the servers can be stacked, the more productive the square footage.
That loud hum you're hearing isn't the servers themselves. It's actually hundreds of fans powered by industrial-sized air conditioners. Without them, these machines could overheat and fail, and that could damage the backbone of our digital economy.
An enormous amount of electricity is needed to both power servers and supply those cooling systems. The center we visited actually runs on 100% renewable energy, but also has backup diesel generators.
We've got 24 generators that support the 6 data halls. These kick in the event there's a failure inside or there's a utility failure, but our clients really demand and expect resiliency as a tip-top requirement.
Quite the contingency plan.
Indeed.
There are currently more than 10,000 data centers globally, more than half of them housed in the U.S., with forecasts predicting demand for data centers could triple by 2030, increasing power usage to nearly 220 gigawatts. That's enough to power roughly 180 million homes. Some communities are pushing back on new data center construction over that energy usage, which is driving higher utility bills in some regions and pulling from local water resources for cooling purposes.
I mean, how much more growth can we expect in this industry?
We feel like AI is just the beginning stages, and quite honestly, digital transformation is really just now emerging with enterprises. Most enterprises have a majority of their infrastructure still living in their data centers, which can't support the density or the cooling requirements needed with the next wave of fill-in-the-blank chip. So we think the demand principles are pretty strong.
And there are thousands more data centers on the docket to be built just this year. It's an insanely fast expansion. And with that quick expansion comes added questions about community impact, sustainability issues, that energy consumption. And so this piece will kick off a series that we're digging into to answer some of those questions, ranging from how some of these facilities are investing in cutting edge cooling technologies to communities that are coalescing to prevent even further construction. Del.
So, Mara, let's circle back to those energy costs. You mentioned that they require massive amounts of energy. And energy, as you know, is a huge concern for towns and cities where the data centers are being built. So are there policies or regulations being put in place to alleviate the price hikes?
Well, Del, we heard from the president during his State of the Union address earlier this week, laying out that he had apparently negotiated a deal with tech companies to require them to build their own power sources on site for these data centers. I know from my previous reporting, companies like Anthropic, Meta, Google had already committed to this, saying that they would pay for that energy investment. There are other efforts state by state to require some data centers to pay for the energy infrastructure that needs to be put in place, the power lines, for example, the generation use, whereas other states are looking into policies that would require data centers to fluctuate their usage if they're tapping into community energy grids, to fluctuate based on time of day, so they're not pulling too much from the grid. But realistically, that support for each of these centers to have essentially their own mini grid to pull from is essential. We have seen several centers like the ones we toured, for example, really tapping into that renewable energy to be able to energize their centers while using some of the diesel backups, for example, solely as a backup. And so that's something that other states are looking into enforcing as well.
Scripps News business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett for us live in Denver. Mara, thank you very much. Talks between the United States and Tehran in Geneva now wrapping up. The White House demanding Tehran give up its nuclear ambitions. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff warning that Iran is only a week away from developing nuclear bomb-making material. Said that last week. Iran, for its part, refuses to stand down, saying it has a right to explore nuclear options for energy. That's what's on the table. Outside, that massive U.S. military presence continues off the coast of Iran. Scripps News senior White House correspondent Haley Bull is live now on the North Lawn. And Haley, what do we know about the progress of these talks so far?
Well, Del, those talks ending in Geneva without an apparent deal, but perhaps with some signs of progress. Now, there is no official word from the White House on their sentiment towards it, as they have been very careful in how they are describing these. Oman's foreign minister, though, today touting, quote, significant progress, saying that technical level discussions would take place next week, but there are questions still about the contours of any potential deal each side is willing to agree to. An Iranian official saying that enrichment would continue, nothing would leave Iran, though the issue of dilution remained on the table. Now, for its part, the U.S. has been crystal clear, no nuclear weapons for Iran. Secretary of State Marco Rubio ahead of these talks saying that Iran is not enriching, but trying to get to a point where they can. in suggesting that they have not seen the actions to back up what he called their rhetoric, and noting the Iranians' enrichment processes historically underground versus above ground, as seen with other countries for civilian energy purposes. He also said it would be a, quote, big problem if the Iranians refused to talk about their ballistic missiles, as the talks have largely centered on Iran's nuclear program, and that has not been an issue the Iranians have been willing to wade into, Dow. Now, Iran's foreign minister indicated that those indirect talks were carried out over the course of 6 hours, in part facilitated by the director of the International Atomic Energy Agency, saying that they seriously addressed elements of an agreement. But again, that remains to be seen if those statements match the reality and the perception of the White House coming out of those delicate talks. In the meantime, of course, the military pressure in the region has continued, as the president has been clear. Diplomacy is his first choice, but he retains his options.
Haley, Iran just one of the powder kegs taking place across the country right now, across the world. The other, of course, being the U.S. and Ukraine. You're also tracking those talks. What's the status?
Yeah, a unique situation in that we have seen the U.S. negotiator, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner really hold simultaneous talks as they are having indirect discussions with Iranians. They have also met with Ukrainian officials again today. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying he spoke to them by phone after a bilateral meeting with Ukrainian negotiators in Geneva. Now, Zelensky shared optimism for another round of trilateral talks with Russia next month, but also doubled down on his calls for finalizing security guarantees and preparing for a leaders-level meeting. Now, Ukraine's lead negotiator said they also looked at long-term economic support for Ukraine during this meeting. One notable thing we heard from a Ukrainian official this week before this, Dow, was a feeling that the Russians are serious based on the contingency that they have sent to these trilateral talks in the past. Again, today's was a bilateral talk, but also a sentiment that is because not necessarily the Russians are serious about peace, but they're serious about buying time.
Scripps News senior White House correspondent Haley Beaufort live on the North Lawn. Haley, thank you.
Straight ahead on Today as It Happened.
Pete Hegseth can continue to double down on losing. I totally get that. I mean, this judge made a really strong case in his opinion that the Department of Defense, and specifically Pete Hegseth, is violating my constitutional rights of freedom of speech.
You're watching Today as It Happened. Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. So let's dive right back in.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is pushing now to revive his efforts to punish Senator Mark Kelly. Kelly and other Democrats urged service members to refuse illegal orders. Now, Mark Kelly is a retired Navy captain, so he sued last month to block Hegseth from docking his military retirement pay. This month, a federal judge said, you can't do that. Now, Hegseth is appealing. Scripps News senior congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live on Capitol Hill. He talked to Mark Kelly today, and Kelly knew he was going to be in a long fight, so what is he prepared to do?
Well, Del, the sense I get is that he's prepared to fight this as long as it takes, and he's said as much to me and other reporters when we've pushed him about this kind of ongoing legal saga with the Trump administration. They continue to fight him on those comments that he made in a PSA-style video urging members of the military or the intelligence community to reject orders that they view to be either unconstitutional or illegal. Secretary Hegseth has, of course, filed a countersuit, filed an appeal to that ruling that a judge found that it was, in fact, an infringement on Senator Kelly's First Amendment rights for the Secretary of Defense to try and demote him after the fact, now that he is a retired U.S. Navy captain. So what's interesting is this does not seem like it's going to stop anytime soon. This will continue to play out, and the senator made very clear to me earlier that he plans on continuing to appeal pretty much as long as it takes. That's the sense I got. Take a listen. Secretary Hegseth has now appealed that decision that judge found, siding with you over your freedom of speech, your First Amendment right to tell members of the military that they can refuse orders that they believe to be illegal. do you have any confidence that this could go much further? I mean, do you think that this will make it all the way to the Supreme Court, or are you concerned that the courts could side against you here? They've already sided with you once.
Well, the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, can continue to double down on losing. I totally get that. I mean, this judge made a really strong case in his opinion that the Department of Defense, and specifically Pete Hegseth, is violating my constitutional rights of freedom of speech. And also, in doing that, is putting in jeopardy the constitutional rights of over 2 million retired Americans. But I don't expect these guys to, give up. I mean, we know who they are. So this is going to go to the D.C. Circuit, which is the appeals court. I have, faith that the law's on my side, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
To be clear, this was not the only legal hot water that Senator Kelly and those other Democrats have found themselves in. Just last month, there were reports that the U.S. Attorney for the District of D.C., Jeanine Pirro, had tried to get a grand jury to indict these Democratic members of Congress on charges of sedition or other charges for making these statements about the military, for making these statements about what you cannot and cannot say, or urging members to refuse orders from President Trump, which Senator Kelly and others have repeatedly said. We were just saying you should refuse illegal orders. They did not point to any specific order in particular that has been given to members of the military by the second Trump administration. He told me that even though there are reports in recent days that the U.S. Attorney for the District of D.C., Jeanine Pirro, will no longer pursue those charges here. He said it's still possible that the Trump administration could seek another venue, another district court to try those charges against a grand jury. Again, the fact that they were unable to return an indictment against those 6 sitting Democratic members of the House and Senate, certainly a blow to the Trump administration. The president posted on Truth Social in the wake of that video message that this was that filming that message, was seditious behavior, punishable by death. He also reposted calls from supporters to hang Senator Kelly over those comments.
Nate, I know you had a wide-ranging interview. I'm curious, because Mark Kelly is a senator from a border state, did he have anything to say about the DHS funding cuts?
He did. And look, Senator Kelly has long been pushing for some of the reforms that we've talked so much about in recent weeks. Del, we interviewed him a couple of months ago, and he was, one of the early senators to push for some of those changes that were then kind of more so adopted by the whole of the Democratic caucus up here on Capitol Hill. Demands for the Trump administration for changes to the way that Immigration and Customs Enforcement operates. Everything from requiring the use of body cameras, requiring positive identification on officers' uniforms, banning the use of face coverings, requiring judicial warrants. Those sorts of things were championed by Senator Kelly in a bill to try and rein in Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Even though Democrats have long kept those demands on the table, there still appears to be no progress up here on Capitol Hill reaching a solution. There were some reports that the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, actually just went into a meeting at the White House with President Trump, possibly, at least in the West Wing of the White House. Not clear if that's about government funding or not. But the reality is, Del, the Senate has left for the weekend, a long weekend. They're not here tomorrow. The House of Representatives does not take their next vote until next Wednesday. So the possibility of this shutdown stretching yet another week seems all but inevitable at this point, just given the amount of inertia here, despite the fact that we're in this shutdown. Senator Kelly, though, digging in, making clear he wants to hold out, like many of his Democratic colleagues, for all of those changes that Democrats had requested. Earlier this week, Senate Minority Leader Schumer saying the White House just has not budged enough to warrant a deal. Take a listen. Do you get the sense that there are any positive conversations that are still happening between your leadership and the White House?
Well, I mean, the White House should accept the changes that we want to see, specifically with ICE. ICE is out of control. It needs to be totally overhauled. Some people need to be fired because they are routinely violating people's constitutional rights. The things we're asking for, they're pretty basic. They're pretty basic steps that ICE could take.
Scripps News senior congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed for us live on Capitol Hill. Nate, thank you very much.
Coming up on Today's It Happened.
No one's accusing at this moment the Clintons of any wrongdoing. They're going to have due process. but we have a lot of questions.
We are sitting through an incredibly unserious clown show of a deposition.
Thanks for staying with us here on Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer with your daily look at the day's biggest stories.
Happening now, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has been behind closed doors for most of the day in Chappaqua, New York. Lawmakers in the House Oversight Committee continue their investigation into both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They want to know, what did she know and when did she know it? She says she knows nothing and saw nothing. Scripps News senior national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York now with the very latest on this. And Alex, as we have been talking about this, what are your sources telling you?
Well, they are still behind closed doors right now, and they have told me that they had to pause briefly because Congresswoman Lauren Boebert took a photo of Secretary Clinton and sent it to a right-wing commentator. But look, a former president and first lady have never been forced to testify before a congressional committee under a subpoena before. And on Thursday, today, Hillary Clinton, she's sitting down for a deposition with House lawmakers as part of their investigation into the Epstein files. And don't forget, tomorrow, Friday, former President Bill Clinton, he is going to be deposed as well. Neither of them is accused of wrongdoing, but lawmakers say they are continuing to look for any information to help with their investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Former Secretary of State and First Lady Hillary Clinton deposed behind closed doors on Thursday as part of House lawmakers' probe into files released by the Justice Department involving convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But House Democrats said the testimony provided no new information.
We have not learned one new thing.
Neither Hillary nor her husband, former President Bill Clinton, have been accused of wrongdoing.
They're going to have due process, but we have a lot of questions, and the purpose of the whole investigation is to try to understand many things about Epstein.
The Clintons initially resisted testifying, but Republicans and Democrats on the House Oversight Committee voted last month to hold them in contempt if they didn't.
From day one, we have said that we want to talk to anyone, any person with information about Jeffrey Epstein.
Files released by the Justice Department show no correspondence between Hillary Clinton and Epstein. Hillary's name is mentioned hundreds of times, but is not in any documents relevant to criminal accusations against Epstein. In a deposition last year, Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell said she didn't remember ever seeing the two together. Democratic lawmakers focused on Hillary Clinton's apparent lack of ties to Epstein.
She, again, never met Jeffrey Epstein, never went to the island, never went to the plane, and had no knowledge of any of his crimes.
Bill Clinton had traveled on Epstein's plane, and photos from the files showed the two together and the former president in a pool with Maxwell. The former president says he cut ties with Epstein in the mid-2000s before Epstein was convicted on prostitution charges. And Del, again, former President Bill Clinton is set to be deposed tomorrow. Last week, billionaire Les Wexner, whose money was managed by Jeffrey Epstein, he was deposed in Ohio. No Republicans traveled to Ohio for that deposition, but today both Democrats and Republicans were there.
I'm Holly Furfer. Have a spectacular Thursday night.